Learn everything faster, never forget anything again, and only write straight A's. It's all possible if you understand things effectively. We will now clarify how to do this. Do you know this situation? We are learning something new, perhaps because we have an exam soon, or because we are currently interested in a particular topic. After spending some time with the material, everything sounds logical in our head, and we have the impression that we really understand the subject. But as soon as we want to explain it, in an exam, for example, we get stuck. Somehow we lack the words to express it clearly, and we realize that we actually didn't understand it completely, even though it sounded so logical in our head. This happens to many of us, but it doesn't have to be this way. In this video, we will discuss a method that will help you truly understand newly learned information in the future and get straight A's on your exams. But first, we need to deal with two different types of knowledge. Rolf Dobelli explains them in his book, The Art of Thinking Clearly, very vividly with the following short story. After the famous physicist Max Planck received the Nobel Prize for his research in the field of quantum physics, he gave lectures about it throughout Germany. His chauffeur, who listened to the lectures every time, soon knew them by heart and suggested that they could have some fun by secretly swapping roles in the next town, with Planck disguised as the chauffeur and the chauffeur giving the lecture. And the presentation was a complete success. Enthusiastic applause and standing ovations. The chauffeur was able to deliver everything just as well as Max Planck himself. But then, a small professor spoke up and asked a question about the content of the lecture. The chauffeur, of course, had no idea. He didn't even understand the question. But still, he remained calm and replied, "I'm surprised you're asking such a simple question. Even my chauffeur knows the answer to that." What do you think the main message of the story is? Well, the chauffeur had a remarkably quick comprehension. But that's not the point. The point is that there are different types of knowledge, real Planck knowledge and superficial chauffeur knowledge. Max Planck had real knowledge, a profound understanding of the facts in his lectures, and his driver did not. He had only learned to use the right words at the right time. He could use technical terms in the correct context and reproduce the content without errors. In a way, he also had knowledge about the name and designations, but he didn't really understand anything. Okay, all very interesting, but what does it have to do with us? Well, maybe the following situation sounds familiar to you. We want to get a really good grade in the next exam, for a change, so we study for hours, memorize all the material, have a really good feeling. But then there are these strange questions that seem to have nothing to do with the topic. These are transfer tasks that test our Planck knowledge, that is, whether we really understand something fundamentally. We won't be able to answer them with just chauffeur knowledge. And somehow it's unfair because the lesson is often structured in a way that we only learn this superficial knowledge. But there is an incredibly powerful technique, the Feynman Method, with which we can develop a deep understanding, real knowledge about pretty much any topic in the shortest possible time and only get top grades. Do you know the quote that is often attributed to Albert Einstein? If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Or if we turn it around, if you really want to understand something profoundly, you have to be able to explain it in the simplest words possible. And that's essentially the core of the Feynman method. Strictly speaking, it consists of 4 steps. Step 1, explain the topic you want to learn in the simplest possible words to another person. Once completely from beginning to end. The person doesn't have to actually exist. Just make sure you explain it in writing or orally out loud, whichever you prefer. But isn't that actually the wrong order? When we want to learn something new, don't we have to absorb as much knowledge as possible about this topic first? Not necessarily. If we start explaining directly without prior extensive research, we will probably quickly get into difficulties. But that's exactly the idea behind the Feynman method and leads us directly to Step 2. Identify knowledge gaps. Every time you get into difficulties explaining, or when you use complicated terms and technical jargon, make a small note of it. Once you have finished explaining completely, You will immediately see all the things you don't know, and you only need to focus on those things. Namely in Step 3, fill knowledge gaps. Simply look up everything you noted in Step 2 in your books or other sources. Try to find simpler words or appropriate images and everyday examples for technical terms and complicated words. Step 4. Repeat the process and simplify until you can explain the entire topic from beginning to end without any problems and without technical jargon. The central element of the Feynman method is simplification, because that's where the magic happens. To be able to explain something vividly to someone who doesn't have the same knowledge background as you have to explain everything based on the things the other person already knows. Imagine having to explain to a 5-year-old what fire is and how it works, including the chemical reaction, so that they can really understand everything. It sounds almost impossible, but it's not. In the info box, I have linked a video in which Richard Feynman, the namesake of the method, explains exactly that. If you can replace the entire technical jargon in your explanation with simpler words or everyday examples, you really understand the topic. Then you don't need to memorize difficult things anymore because you can derive everything at any time. If you're looking for exciting topics to try the Feynman method on, take a look at the info box. In addition to Richard Feynman's video, I have linked more videos and resources. So that's it for today. Take care and see you next time.